Alright guys, welcome to another highs and lows breakdown of the pound, Japanese yen. I'll get straight into the chart. Sorry I missed last week's video. I had the worst headache ever that I've ever experienced in my entire life. So I'm really sorry if y'all weren't able to get any updates from me last week. We're looking at the pound Japanese yen on the weekly time frame first, right? Last week we had a reasonably bullish weekly candle. We made a high at 140.34, and last week's low is coming in at 138.10 approximately. What do I see currently happening? Well, just like I mentioned in previous videos, if you go back weeks, I mentioned that we're currently in an uptrend on the pound, and where we made a low here, we made a high, we made a higher low, we made a higher high, we made a higher low, and we're currently in the process. We have technically already created a higher high because it's higher than this previous high, but I suspect there is some potential for us to push up a bit or a tad bit higher. Or conversely, we could sell off from this area. But seeing that we've already created our higher high, we really need to be wary in terms of taking really nice buy positions, but still being aware of the potential for us to run into resistance to sell off, right, guys? So I put back on all my lines of support and resistance and the channel line, and we'll take a peek at it on the daily, right? Now technically we are still functioning within this channel here. We had some peaks to the upside, but we are still functioning within this channel. What I see happening, if we could drop down to the forward time frame, right? On the forward, no, I've left all my areas of support and resistance I was looking at last week, right? Now just to mention, I should mention that I only took one trade for the entire week last week, and it was a losing trade, just like 20 pips I lost, so it really wasn't a big deal. But I was so out of it that I really couldn't focus, and once I took that losing trade for me, I just was like, alright, I'm already having a headache. My mind's not in this thing 100%, so I'll take that loss and I'll take the week off, right? So I hope that shows that you really need to manage how you trade and, listen to yourself. If you feel like it's not really a trading week for you, don't be afraid to just take the week off. And my head was pounding non-stop. Alright, so getting distracted, let's get back into the charts, right? So on the pound Japanese yen, what I see happening is that if we could create support on a lower wick, we could get a push up into 1441. If I outline that area on the chart, right, this area here is approximately 1441. I think given the bullish price action, heavy bullish price action, I'd say, because if you look at these candles have been creating higher highs and higher lows for the entire week, right? We made a low, made a high, this candle made a low, then it created a high, made a low, high, low, high, low. So all these daily candles for the entire week have creating higher highs and higher lows, except for this bearish doji candle, which happened on Friday, and that's understandable, right, guys? So the two things I see happening, it's either we reject from this area of 140 flat, or I genuinely think that there's a strong chance that we may break this area. If we could retest it as support and push up into 141 and potentially higher up into 143. But you all know the drill, right? We take things day by day. Let's see what price action is telling us. Conversely, we could push down into the bottom part of this channel or trend line, find some support and push up. But given the level of bullishness that we're currently seeing on this pair, I think we get a really shallow retracement. We could come down, retest this zone at 139 flat, 139.10 to push back up. Because remember, if you look at the weekly time frame, let's zoom in, sorry about that. Alright, if you zoom into the weekly time frame, right, zooming into the weekly time frame, we have the strong bullish weekly candle. So what I suspect is this current weekly candle could come down, create some support, form a wick at around this level, which would be 139 flat as I mentioned before, and push up to tap into 141 flat. Once we get that push up into 141 flat, we look to see what price action is showing us at around these levels, and if we could even push up again and get some support, we could get buys up to retest 144, 143, anywhere around there. Will I be looking for sells on this? It's possible, but I would like to see price break below 139 for sells. So on pound Japanese yen, we're still very bullish, so look out for buys from the levels that I mentioned before. If I drop down to the 1 hour time frame just to get an idea of where we are at currently, let's take this off. Yeah, I still think we are extremely bullish on this pair, so I'm still looking out for buys, but also be aware of this 140 flat region. So even the highs that we pushed past 140 flat and we touched into 140.20, look out for these areas for rejections. If you could get a nice retest of this area, get some support, we could be on our way up for some more buys. Euro USD, I found this pair to be really interesting when I glanced at it on Friday. If I drop down to let's look at it on the weekly first. All right. So I know a lot of people, I mean, it could have quite possibly been me if I mentioned in the chat that I was waiting for us to break and close below 1700 for sells, down into 1500, but we never got that. Price always remained above, what is this, 18? This is, price remained above 1700, so I got no confirmation. So for sells, so no sells were taken. I know a lot of persons was trying to sell this pair down, thinking that, all right, we've pushed up into resistance, blah, blah, blah. We could sell all the way down, but that did not happen because we did not see the price action for it. And what last week's candle is showing me that there's still a lot of potential for price to push up even further. But yet I still would like us to get that confirmation of breaking above 1900 flat. If we glance to the monthly time frame just to see where we are at, right, on the monthly time frame, we see the previous month we had a strong bullish close, and we're still kind of in an indecision state, as currently this current monthly candle is printing a doji, but that could change at a moment's notice. So what I would like to see here for buys, now this is the proper buy setup that I'll be looking for. If we could break above 1900 and see some strong support formed around 1900, I think we should be good for buys up to retest. Let's see, what would be our next area of support or resistance if I grab that there. And actually that we really have, all right, well, the first area I see across here would be 1.2050, 1.250 approximately. That'll be our first area of resistance, and second area of resistance would be all the way up here. I'd say 1.22 flat would be the next area of resistance. I deleted the line there. Let's see, 1.22. Let's get that one there, 1.22. Right, next area at 1.22, and then after that we're looking to retest these highs at 24.50 or thereabouts. Now, those are my upward targets, right? Now, I'm still keeping in mind, now this is how I trade, I'm still keeping in mind that we are at even though last week's candle closed extremely bullish, I'm still keeping in mind that we are in a very strong area of resistance, guys. That's why for the entire week we have been within kind of ping-ponging on the lower time frames within this region. So my next setup, so I gave you all my bullish bias on this pair. Now my bearish bias remains the same in terms of if I see us break below 1.1700, I'm instantly taking sells down into 1500. If I go to the daily time frame, as you can see, like look at this nice ping pong in action. I mean, you could have caught some scalp sells and scalp buys between 1700 and 1900, and I mean that's a 200 pip range. Is it 200 pips? Yeah, that's a 200 pip range. So you could have been scalping that in between, but as I said, I wasn't trading. So yeah, if you drop down to the forward time frame, yeah, price is currently consolidating between 1900 and 1700. So we're looking for a breakout basically. If I draw I mean, this is a really big range, so a skill trader could scalp sell and scalp buy this between this range, but I mean, that's not really what I'm looking for on this pair. So if I zoom out on this, just to give you all an idea of what I would wait for, because I mean, inexperienced traders right now are trying to call the tops and call the bottoms on this, who's caught in sells and is in drawdown. So you really want to try to tap into that experience frame of mind. So if I get my brush, so what I'm basically looking for is if you could break out above this area, retest it as support, you could catch buys up to retest some of these zones. Conversely, if it is we could break below 1700, retest this area as resistance, I'd sell it down to 1500. So those are my two setups that I'm looking forward for on Euro USD. Now, keeping in mind this is a big range, so I mean if you were buying the bottom of the range for 200 pips up, selling it down for 200 pips down, all right, fine, if that's what you're interested in. But for me, just because this area is a bit tricky, I prefer to wait for a breakout of this area completely to catch some clean moves to the upside or some clean moves to the downside. Another pair, let's look at the pound Australian dollar. Now I'm pretty sure, well, once I would have been looking at this pair. Let's take a look at the monthly time frame and the weekly time frame. On the monthly time frame, what are we on? Let me remove all my support and resistance lines. All right, on the monthly time frame, previous month close relatively bullish. We're currently at a doji in this current month. Let's look at the weekly time frame. On the weekly time frame, well, we had this really strong morning star, and we have been potentially holding this area of support to push further up. And that's just what we're hoping for, right, guys? So yeah, if I bring back on my areas of support and resistance and drop down to the forward time frame, I really like this setup. I would have taken buys from this area because this kind to me looks like a kind of head and shoulders. This is the head, this was the left shoulder, and this potentially is the right shoulder. For buys up from this area would have been 150 pips. So there is still a lot of potential for this to continue going up, guys. Personally, I would like us to stay above 1.82. 1.82 is up here. Well, all right, not 1.82. Probably I'd say 1.8, 150. If you could stay above 1.8, 150 would be a nice area to catch some buys up. And buys up first to retest this lower high. Let me see, what area that is, at 84.50. If you could go head up to retest 84.50, and then for me, I'd reassess at that point and see how bullish or how bearish this pair is. This is the pound Australian dollar, and conversely, if it is a break below 1.8 150, I'd retest that area as resistance. I'd take sells down to retest 1.80 flat. Moving on quickly to euro Japanese yen. We seem to be maintaining our bullish bias on this pair from how many weeks ago that we called the bullish bias from these lows down here, and we've been pushing up ever since. We're currently at 126.20. If we could maintain that area as support, we could see this continue to push further up. looks like we actually, like I mentioned a while ago that I see this pushing up into 126 flat, and we're actually at that area, so I have no more areas of resistance marked off on the chart. But we could mark off 126.8 as the next area. Well, it was the area of resistance that we tapped into. After that, we have this area up here at 127.50, I think. Yeah. And then potentially we have, let me see if I can zoom out a bit more. Then potentially we have this area. Now, however, we are running into some really strong resistance on this pair. If I glance across at my drop to the 4, or maybe the weekly. Let me see. Zoom in. Let's look at the weekly. Yeah, we are running into some really strong resistance on this pair. So I'd be looking at last week's high at 126.80. If we fail to break above last week's high at 126.80, we could see this pair with the ability to sell down into 124. That's 200 pips away. Conversely, once we get support at either, I'd say 125.25 or even 126 flat, we could catch some buys to retest the highs and potentially create a new high on this pair. Excuse me. All right, are there any other pairs? I started looking at gold last week. I mean, it used to be my favorite pair. I know I won't get into that. I really won't get into that. I don't want you all trading gold, especially where you need to pay a lot of attention on this pair as of late. So yeah, we went over the pound Japanese yen, we went over euro USD, we went over the pound Australian dollar, and we went over euro Japanese yen. So I hope this week's analysis was helpful. I'll try to keep you all updated during the week on what trades or what setups that I'm looking at. So enjoy.